Hugo, what is a multi-tower service center and what are the challenges in integrating an end-to-end process in this setup?
Yeah, so we had some good discussions on the panel around that, and I think that one of the challenges is actually where do you start? So some organisations, most organisations, start with a finance initiative, an IT initiative, an HR initiative, and as those different leaders, the CFO, CIO, CHRO, drive through the changes, they create service delivery models, they create shared service centres, they're doing it for their structure, their facility, and they're doing it for what makes sense for their function. After the event, when you have these different service centres in place, that's when people seem to come and address this problem or this opportunity of bringing all the centres together into one place. But it's a very hard place to start. So again, just on the debate and the panel and the discussion, the experience we had, you can start with a framework, you can start with some alignment, but to start your whole shared services journey with the kind of the imperative, the objective of making it multi-tower is actually quite tough. And I think that's more to do with culture, with change, with leadership. And actually, at that point, it's kind of theoretical. You haven't worked through the details of what exactly needs to be done and how you need to make the changes.
Is there a best practice in deciding where to start, or would you consider this on a case-to-case basis depending on?
No, I don't think it's a best practice. I think it's probably common sense. I think taking a very pragmatic view, which is what is your organisation like? How does it manage change? Is it very centralised? Is it very decentralised? And how unified or how aligned are your different supporting functions? So your finance, your HR, your IT, your procurement. In some organisations they're very aligned, and sometimes the leadership for some of those functions sits under the CFO, in which case you can start with a multi-function strategy. If you have organisations where the functions are quite disparate and they're not so aligned, they're at different stages of maturity, the HR leader may not want the CFO to take the lead, or the CIO may not want the CFO to take the lead. You run into those organisational politics. So I think that the reality is stand back and just assess where you are as an organisation and what your ability to make change is. What's the path of least resistance. So horses for courses.
Many people have the preconception that the SSO industry is one of process-driven, monotonous work. How would you dispute this?
I think it's an element of it. So I think it probably started there. If you look at the original shared services concept, it was about taking transactional work that was repetitive, it was formulaic, it was rule-based, it was document-based, and it was something that could be you could consolidate, scale, and take to an offshore location, a low-cost location. So, kind of by definition, it was a little bit like the factory, and some people do talk about a transaction processing factory. So I think there's an element of truth in your comment, but the reality is once you've built that structure, once you have that consolidated experience and knowledge, you can start layering other capabilities, other processes on top, your reporting, your reconciliation, your analysis, and it becomes a very powerful tool and a very powerful capability in the organisation. So I think the short answer is yes, but I think it's a starting point. And I think once you have that starting point right, you can then move on from there with higher value added work.
This year, more than ever, we have found more people wanting to talk about the customer. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, it is about the customer. So what you're doing when you're building a shared service centre is you're taking a group of people or several groups of people from different parts of your organisation in different countries and bringing them together into one place to provide a service. And service centre, if I emphasise the word service, it's synonymous with customer. And the customers in this case are internal. Some of your customers or your interactions may be external, but for the most part we're talking about serving internal customers. And when you move to a service centre structure, a new service delivery model, you have to think of the people that you are supporting as your customers. You can't think of them as just your colleagues or another department or somebody that you're doing something for. You have to switch into a customer service mindset. It doesn't matter if you're processing an expense claim or completing a balance sheet reconciliation. You have a customer, and it could be a finance manager, it could be a CFO, it could be a controller, but that person is your customer, and you are committing with your service level agreements and the whole governance structure around a shared service centre. You're committing to provide a service at an acceptable level of quality for a cost within a time frame. And frankly, you have to stick to it. And if you do, you are providing customer service. And if you exceed it, you're excelling at that service. If you don't meet those levels, it's not service. So customer centricity is really, really important, whether it's executives, whether it's employees, whether it's in HR, IT or finance. If you have that mindset in how you structure and deliver your work, you'll have the makings of a successful centre.
Which technology do you think has the biggest impact on the SSO market today?
I think technology does play a role, but I think it's as much process as it is technology. So you could have great technology and you could include lots of disparate unaligned processes, and you just have a faster, more efficient way of doing things very differently, which I don't think is very smart. So I'd say in the initial stages it's process and policy and technology. I think as you then begin to increase your footprint of services to the customer, things like employee self-service, manager self-service, the portals, the availability of information, the kind of the look and feel of those portals is really important, particularly in HR and IT. I think the other area which is crucial is the data mining and the analytics and the reporting capability. So you have your baseline systems and processes, but on top of that, the two layers, the two pieces I think provide the most value would be the portals and the interfaces that allow people to come and access information and decisions and data on their own in a user-friendly way, much as they do in their private lives, whether it's e-banking, it's shopping on eBay or Amazon. You know, you want to have that look and feel and that responsiveness, and that's very powerful because it creates engagement and it makes people want to go back to the site because it's an easy way of doing something. The analytics is less about a technology, it's more about a capability, but in a center you sit on top of a huge amount of data. You have a vast amount of historical and current data, and if your analytical tools and techniques are correct and you have some sensible analytical technologies, your ability to go and mine data and look for trends and patterns, look for predictive analytics, look at how you visualize the data and share information back with your business users is also crucial. You know, gone are the days of producing a 3-inch thick report and dropping it on somebody's desk. You now want a concise, distilled, visual display of data that's informative and allows decision making. So I think for me it's analytics and visualization, and it's the portals and the interface to the customers.
One of the key themes of this year's conference is creating an agile operational structure. Can you share some thoughts about this?
I think in most organisations I know, the shared services strategy and structure has always been pretty agile, and I think the agility is two things. One is the physical agility, so the ability to relocate centres and to move capability and capacity around. It's not uncommon to see organisations embark on a strategy, build a centre somewhere like Singapore, get it up and running, it runs maturely, processes work. 5 years later you move it to India, you move it to the Philippines for a lower cost location. You might outsource it to a third party, again for a lower cost. So I think that there's a lot of agility built into people's mindsets when they approach this. Certainly the experienced, mature organisations and the people that have been through this before, always thinking 5 years ahead around being agile and moving work and relocating is important. I think the other aspect of agility is just flexibility and being responsive. So if your customer, again, whether it's an employee, whether it's your finance business partners or COEs, if they come back with different needs, and businesses change, you know, you acquire new markets, you acquire new lines of service, so the business is constantly evolving, and you have to be agile, you have to be able to cope with that. Lots of M&A, there's a lot of divestiture that goes on, there's lots of acquisitions going on. You have to be agile and able to cope with that. So the expectation of the service centre is that you're ready to cope with whatever we throw at you, whether it comes in the form of a new line of business or it comes in the form of an M&A. And I think, again, that's the trick to unlocking value in a shared services organisation. If you just stick with the factory, the transaction processing hub, I think you've achieved some level of value, but I think you're missing a trick. I think if you start looking at this layering on extra services and this responsiveness, this service that you provide to customers, that agility, I think that's what makes the difference.
On some level, I'm just wondering, do you see a conflict between process-driven and being an agile organization? Because one would think that if it's really process-intensive, it will be very difficult to be quite flexible and adapt. What do you think?
I think if you approach the process alignment and standardization and automation so that you end up with a compact, neat set of processes, I think that allows you to be agile. I think if you have a whole bunch of processes that have exceptions, they're not rule-based, they have differing technologies, there's manual steps, I think your agility is quite limited. Your ability to come back and to be agile and respond to requests, to mine data, to relocate is quite tough. So I think your agility is supported by processes, but it's around the mantra of standardization and, you know, Six Sigma kind of approach to how you structure and support that work. So process and agility works well when they're aligned, and it doesn't work well when they're not aligned.